Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we're going to talk about Pokemon versus Magic the Gathering. I've touched on this in the past before, but in 2020, something very interesting has occurred. Pokemon has surpassed Magic, without a doubt, at this point. I thought it was going to happen eventually. I didn't expect it to happen so quickly, but hindsight's 2020 with this unique year of 2020. A lot has happened. Since March, I think a lot of people are at home looking for better times. I feel like a lot of people are like delving into their nostalgia. And that's why you see so many people returning to Pokemon. More specifically, what they're doing is returning to an experience where you don't see that at all happening with Magic. There's not a lot of people flooding into Magic right now. If anything, it's the opposite. And that's because there isn't this experience. What Magic does very well above all other trading card games is that I think it's by far the most competitive, detailed, just well polished trading card game on the planet. But that's where it starts and stops. There is this no universal experience like there was with Pokemon, especially like the red and blue original era. I mean, that was just your life. It wasn't just you, it wasn't your neighborhood, it wasn't just your school, it wasn't just your state, it wasn't just your country, it was a global thing. And it really connects everybody. And more importantly, it's cyclical. Like you have the same experience with the next generation, whether it's like Sword and Shield, Sun and Moon, XY, whatever point in the timeline. Like Ethan from E4 is a great example. He's like 10 years younger than me, and he adores, the EX era just like I do the original era. It's the same thing, just with different generation. So Pokemon has a lot of things happening in a more dynamic way than Magic does. Magic, again, all eggs in one basket, very nice basket, but that's it. There's nothing else there besides that. And I think that's the best starting point for this conversation is that Pokemon ultimately is just a better franchise. It's just a better brand. And this isn't some type of pissing contest. There's like countless data to reinforce that point. Look at something like Pokemon Go, for example. I think Pokemon Go is like the biggest point for how successful Pokemon is as a franchise. Because what Pokemon Go did, it brought new people into Pokemon that didn't grow up with it. When we're talking about this cyclical thing of people who grew up with it, they come back to it, which that already is like any company would die for that. Not only does Pokemon have that, you have something like Pokemon Go where you're getting people who are like 50s, 60s, 70s, like these vintage people who are coming into Pokemon. Like when I do Pokemon Go, half the people are like twice my age, they're like, hey, are you in the Discord? Like they're like more of a Zoomer than me at 60. So that's a great example of how Pokemon is such a successful franchise that something like Pokemon Go can bring in people who didn't grow up with it. That's a very, very rare thing. That's a very rare occurrence. And, comparing that to Magic, there's nothing in Magic that's equivalent to that. I would say there's nothing really in any other collectible that's equivalent to that. Pokemon Go is a very special concept. It's a very special game. And the data reflects that. $1 billion revenue in a year, like billion with a B, and that's one game. We're not even talking about Red, Blue, Yellow, Snap, Stadium, all that stuff, all the way to Sword and Shield. We're not even touching the main series. We're not touching the anime. We're not touching the cards. We're not touching merchandise. We're just talking about one game, $1 billion in revenue. So there's a lot to look at for Pokemon. When you really, even just digging under the surface for 30 minutes, it's very obvious that this franchise is head and shoulders above pretty much everything. That's why it's the highest grossing media franchise. It just goes above and beyond. So therefore, when you bring it back into trading cards, things like trading cards we grew up with. We grew up with Charizard. Like this was the thing everybody talked about. And if you had it, you were like king of the playground. We grew up with like Pikachu and understanding Red Cheeks. And like, that Pikachu promo back there was my first promo as a kid. That isn't unique to me. There's millions of people who had that same experience. And there's millions of people who do value that experience to some degree. And I think that's why Pokemon has the current success it does. Now, does that mean it's always going to be to the moon? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's just everything's just going to keep going the way it is right now. But the bottom line is, Magic's in a different place. Magic right now, in my opinion, is in a moment of identity crisis. When I collect, I'm this rare, weird person in Magic where I like to collect the cards. And very quickly I realized there's not many people doing this. The best example is like these alpha power cards I have back here, like the Mox Emerald and Ruby. I bought those recently, actually a year ago on the same date. I bought them for the same price as some other Power 9 cards. And you can't find a single card in Pokemon, like something like this, like a first edition base would probably be comparable. And even though first edition base is technically, less rare, there's more of it out there, which is more to the point. I can't find a single first edition base card that hasn't increased in a year. Even the bottom tier, energy, like the lowest card has still gone up in a year. And again, first edition base is more common than alpha. And these are the best. Like, this is it. Like, Power 9 is it. Like, that's it. And, that blows my mind. Like, to me, that's the canary in the coal mine. It's only down from there. Like, after the Four Horsemen, it's like a huge drop off. If we really want to go into detail, if you want this to be a long video, here we go. If we go into detail, like with Gold Star era, there's nothing comparable in Magic to the Gold Star era. Gold Star Charizard PSA 10, Gold Star Rayquaza PS 10, 25K right now. There's nothing like that in that era for Magic. There's nothing like the modern era. While people joke about the Charizard stonks, the takeaway from that is that these cards are actually selling. Like, seriously, like Black Label, Hidden Fates Charizard, remember when it hit 10K right out of the gate? And it came down, we all knew it was going to come down, but check out what the price has done. It's come back up. Not a single card in Magic from that era with that quantity is selling even at a fraction of that price. So the takeaway here is that I used to look at alpha and be like, oh man, those Lotuses, those high graded Lotuses, like that's crazy prices, right? Now even the Charizards are dwarfing that. Charizard is dwarfing that. And we're not even getting into the things that just don't exist at all in Magic, like the Illustrator, the Pika trophies, and things like that. None of that even exists. You don't have anything comparable like that. But just sticking to set cards, like first edition base is more common than alpha. And the prices, volume-wise especially, are just way beyond at this point. So, therefore, Magic's in an identity crisis right now. They do the one thing very well, and I would say probably because of, since March and everything, shutting down and things changing, a lot of people can't play paper anymore. They're forced to play online or they're forced to adapt. And I think that's probably hurting a lot of the people. My friends and family who do actually play the game, they say the same thing. Like, it's just not the same online. So I think that's a big component. But again, that's more to that point that Magic is all about one thing. That's playability, that utility. Most people aren't collecting this stuff. And again, especially after Vintage, like, maybe you could throw Urzas in there. Like, I see a little bit of that, but you can wipe that whole set out in one go. Like, it's not as competitive, where there's sets like all the way through WotC from 99 first edition base all the way to like the E series. These sets, each one of them is like a unique challenge. Each one is going to cost a lot more today than it did a year ago. Where in Magic, it's like a lot of it just flatline. Some of it's even depreciated a bit. So therefore, there is an identity crisis like right now. I know people probably want me to talk about the whole secret layer thing, and everybody knows Magic is something I do for fun on the side. Obviously, my expertise is in Pokemon. But with that secret layer, it's like, I think that's more of what I'm getting at, is that people, our Magic is desperate to find, a new customer base. They're really trying to become a collectible, because for the longest time, they have just been a playable item, or a collectible insofar as it has a utility. Not a collectible insofar as it's like an emotional value, because that's how I do it. When I look at Magic, I don't see it as a moneymaker. I just see it as something that, hey, I really like this art. I like the history, and I just want to own that to appreciate it personally. That's where I stand. And that's where I think the general like collector identity. And that's one of the last things I want to touch on here, is that Pokemon is more in line with sports cards, art. I would even say like fashion, coin collecting, numismatics, antiquities, pick your poison. Pokemon is right there with all that stuff. The only difference is you're collecting a Charizard instead of a Gretzky, instead of a Jordan, instead of a Nike Dunk Pigeon or whatever. You're collecting from that same space of like an emotional value, because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's a very fundamental human thing. Where in Magic, I agree there are people who do that, but it's nowhere near as deep. It's nowhere near as a priority. 90% easily is just that playable mentality. So I've said this from the jump about Pokemon. I remember coining the term in the SMR about how like this is Charizard's rookie card, because I understood doing sports and Pokemon. I was like, oh yeah, these are like identical. These are similarities are like 1-to-1. And yeah, I think the combo of having that unique experience that we all had, that we all share, it's a great way for us to connect. The second I say Red Cheeks Pikachu, there's a million people who are just like, yeah, they know that immediately, right? Or like I say, like Naked Misty, immediately they know what I'm talking about. Our first Black Star promo, Ancient Mew, this stuff, just immediately you know exactly what it is, because we all had that experience. And I think right now we're really seeing, the growth of that, because these big channels, whether it's like Logan Paul, rappers buying these cards or whoever, they're doing that out of that same place. It's like, this is what they grew up with. This is their thing. This is our thing. This is like our generation's thing. They understand it, and that's why they're doing it. Again, it's chasing this experience where Magic is lacking that. I think the Secret Layer stuff where they're doing this collab, I know the whole Black Border controversy, because whatever, being playable, but that thing is, again, I think another symptom of this identity crisis, where it's like, hey, we're trying to get this collector thing here that we don't have, because we don't have this experience. There's certain cards like Sarah Angel or whatever, or like your whatever card it is you want to go through that people know the staples, but really that I think is majority just playability. So that's what I have for the Magic Pokemon conversation. It's an interesting time, and again, don't hear this as like I'm trying to do like some pissing contest, like, oh yeah, I've been waiting for the day for Pokemon to take over Magic, because I do all this stuff. Like I really enjoy Magic. I put hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. Again, not for a moneymaker. I just love collecting this stuff. I love this art, but I don't see as many people doing that. I think I'm the weird one who's like taking my Pokemon and other hobbies like mentality and putting it on Magic, where I don't think that's as organically present as it is in Pokemon. But anyway, hopefully I broke that down and gave you some food for thought there, because I think that's where a lot of people stand at the end of the day. I think a lot of people would agree that those are the main differences. But as usual, the deal. Let me know how you feel. Let me know what you think about everything. That's pretty much it, guys. Till next time.